Welcome to the Recruiting Stories podcast, where we celebrate recruiting by exploring the stories of leaders and top performers by digging into their stories and understanding how recruiting has impacted their journey and their success. All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Recruiting Stories podcast powered by Cover 3 Consulting. Our guest today is Mark Manera, founder, owner of and CEO. Do you have CEO? Is that your title?
Whatever. Founder's cool.
Founder of Supply Chain Fitness. You've probably seen him across LinkedIn. He's had a lot of great interviews lately, and I'm thrilled he's on our podcast. So, Mark, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation. Always like to talk to people in logistics, transportation who also share the fitness love as well. And so, yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, same. I thought it would be a good mesh. We share, some similar both interest and values, and your backstory. I think it's pretty cool too. I was just telling Mark offline here, like I'm literally setting in my CrossFit gym, because some scheduling things I had going on this week. So I'm glad we're able to talk fitness in a fitness place.
Exactly. Perfect.
So yeah, tell me, I guess, high level. What does Supply Chain Fitness do? And then if you don't mind, after that, giving us a backstory, how you somehow ended up in this connection between like health and fitness and also the logistics industry.
Yeah. So I feel like the best way to get in there is starting with the story. And I know you want me to start way back. So I'll just kind of start because 3 years ago, I didn't know a single person in trucking, logistics, or the supply chain at all. My background is not in transportation. No one in my family is in transportation. And I know there's some people who are that way. And I know there's also some people who literally have diesel in their blood and their family's been in it for the whole time. Right. And so my background growing up is, we don't live too far away from each other. I'm in St. Louis, born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and grew up in a family of both my parents are optometrists, eye doctors, and a lot of people in my family are in the medical healthcare fields, and kind of played sports all my life, baseball all the way up until about halfway through high school. And then in high school, I went to a really big high school here in St. Louis and realized that, my dreams of being Albert Pujols were probably not likely to happen. And realized that, I was good at baseball, but there was a lot of competition. And, it was either, spend the next 2 years not playing as much as I would like to, or realize, hey, there's other aspects. And at that same time, I was actually hanging out with some family friends, and one of my mom's best friends, her son was really big into CrossFit and into fitness, and we just hit it off, and I really looked up to him all growing up. And he was telling me about this fitness thing. He was showing me, his rings and doing muscle ups. And I was like, man, this looks fun. And I also realized, in high school when, you start lifting with sports, is that I kind of liked the gym aspect more than the on the field aspect. And so all of those things kind of collided at the same time in this pivotal point in a high schooler's life. And I decided to stop playing baseball, and I started doing CrossFit and just fell in love with fitness, and did that all the way through high school. And as I was kind of coming up and deciding what I wanted to do with my life and what college I wanted to go into, I had that family, influence and inspiration as well. It wasn't pressure at all to go into the medical field, but I realized I didn't want to spend, the rest of my life looking at people's eyeballs and saying, which looks better, 1 or 2, right. 2 or 3, right? Yeah. And I was loving the fitness side of things. And so I kind of just went down that path of like, how can I mix both of those together? And ran into physical therapy and figured physical therapy was like a really good mesh. And so I ended up going to a smaller school in St. Louis called Maryville University. They have a direct entry physical therapy program right out of high school. And so I got in, and it's 6.5 years. And I went through that whole process. And early on, I was still loving CrossFit. And one of my good friends at my gym, probably a year and a half, 2 years into school, said, hey, you need to meet this guy who's also a physical therapist. He's starting this other gym, and he's looking for coaches. And I think he'd be a good person for you to talk to. And so I went in there and he was starting really what it was like a barbell strength gym. He was following a lot of starting strength stuff and like just general barbell training and some Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting and stuff like that. And that's what transitioned me into, hey, this kind of getting strong thing sounds cool.
Yeah.
And I really liked the coaching aspect because I was in physical therapy school. I was really passionate about fitness and like learning a ton. And when you're learning a ton and that chart where like you're learning a new thing and it's like you think you're on top of the world, but you're actually like on Mount Stupidus, and then you realize you don't know anything, and then you realize that. And that was kind of at that point. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't say I hit Mount Stupidus. I would say I my confidence in what I knew pushed me to get out of my comfort zone and
Yeah.
learn how to coach and
Right.
get in front of people and lead with that passion of like, hey, I want to help, and like I know some things, I'm like one or two steps ahead of you, so I can really help you out. And just loved coaching and got into that, and ended up getting into some online strength and conditioning coaching through my first company, which was called New World Strength, New
Okay.
World Training and Rehab. We worked with some professional CrossFit athletes, some weightlifters, some
Cool.
power lifters, and really focused on strength training. And it was all online through an app-based platform. And I was doing that, and that was helping me pay through physical therapy school, not anywhere tuition or anything like that, but paying groceries and rent
Right.
and stuff like that as I was going through school. And um, was almost done with PT school and went to a clinical rotation in a small town south of St. Louis in this rural area. It's Bonne Terre. I'm not. Have you ever been to
I've
Bonne
heard of
Terre?
it.
Okay, so Bonne Terre. You're driving down the highway, you blink, you pass it, right? Really small town, and I had the opportunity when I was working that clinic to have a couple of truck drivers walk in the door,
Okay.
and really my first intro to an actual driver, getting to know him on a personal level. There was a
Mhm.
couple of them that I got to know really well and just really jived with them. And there was one driver who 38 years out on the road as an over the road driver. He had just had a total knee replacement. I was seeing him day one after surgery. He was like hobbling in, still a little like wacky on pain medicine because that
Yeah.
surgery sucks and
Yeah.
is not fun. But really just opened up to me. And, as you go through PT, it's not like going to your MD where, that you're in and out in 5 minutes and you don't really build a relationship. I was working with these people for, 45, 60 minutes one-on-one. And just,
Yeah.
especially early on after a surgery when these people are in pain, instead of there just being this awkward silence, you're small talking. So they're not like crying when you're
Yeah.
stretching them out and moving their knee around. And just kind of heard all these stories of his time over the road, 38 years over the road, this, how much he loved trucking, probably some of his big fish stories of out on the road, and, hearing all about it. And I was just really intrigued, and not only intrigued about the lifestyle, but also interested in, he was talking about the sacrifices he made for his family and his kids being out there. And
Yeah.
this whole knee injury that he was dealing with actually started in the late 90s, but it took him 20 years to find the time to have the surgery and everything like that because he was out on the road and trying to keep, a roof over his family's head and food on his kids' table, food on his kids' plate. And just really saw firsthand, the good, the bad, the ugly of trucking, and also what 20, 30 years behind the wheel can do to someone's health if they don't make it a priority. And that sparked me to look a little bit deeper into the industry.
Mhm.
And I was shocked at
Yeah.
just what I saw from a health standpoint of like, the life expectancy of a truck driver is 16 years less than the average population. 16 years. And I'm thinking back to these drivers that I'm talking to and the sacrifices and what they gave up from a quality of life standpoint, from a family standpoint, from just them personally, what they want to do in life to be a truck driver. And then
Yeah.
thinking like, all right, they get to, they retire, enjoy the fruits of their labor. And then 16 years cut off the back end. Like
Yeah.
that sucks. And then, from like a global standpoint of, the fact I have this coffee mug here right here is because a truck driver brought it to the store and I got it. And it's like, it's crazy. These people are such vital aspects, the backbone of our economy. But
Mhm.
then on the back end, their life is just getting, cut away from them. And I just personally don't believe anyone's career should define their health. But the more and more I looked into trucking, that was exactly what was happening. And I was at a point where I was like, how can we ignore this anymore? And I decided I couldn't. And so I actually quit my first company and started what was called the Trucking Fitness Company at that time,
Mhm.
and just really focused on building an exercise nutrition and accountability program that was focused around the lifestyle of a driver. And we've partnered with trucking companies. We've partnered with some insurance companies. We've actually rebranded to Supply Chain Fitness and just really embraced the industry and built something that, I always say it's like a corporate health or a corporate wellness program that's specifically built for trucking. And that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years. And
Great.
there's some new things in the works, but I'll have to come back on and talk about those as they come out.
Man, that's amazing. I love that. There's so many things that resonate. First of all, I think all of us probably were on Mount Stupidus once we graduated high school, by the
Yeah,
way.
exactly. Yeah.
I could just remember I thought I knew everything and I like knew zero. But also amazing that, you have these different convergences, right? Between sports, right? You probably had, like you said, a friend where you're like, all right, I'm at this gym and I'm like, man, I think I enjoy the lifting side more. And then, I had a friend who connected you to somebody else, where you got into more of the strength training. And then,
Well, and the more important part there was I got into the coaching, and I got into the I transitioned my passion and love for the fitness into helping others, and that was really a big spark for me.
Mm-hmm. And what was there a specific coach for you that was like, man, I want to be like them, or whether you just kind of saw that world and were like, that's who I like. I know I can serve in the coaching side.
I would say early on, yes. As I got down the road, some of those people you early on look at, you realize that maybe you don't exactly want to be exactly like them. But it was enough of like a mentorship that it sparked me and was like, I want to learn everything. And he really did open a lot of doors and give me a lot of experience and also taught me a lot of things. So really gracious for that initial coach who got me
Sometimes
into.
even that inspiration, like maybe they're not like, maybe I'm not going to wholesale be somebody, but the inspiration is enough to move, and that changed the trajectory of your life, which is, I mean, that's recruiting, which is incredible. And then same with your happenstance, meeting with a truck driver in the clinic. Like, how cool is that? That like, if those guys wouldn't have walked in, if you were in a different part of the country, maybe you're helping a different industry, but because like you developed a relationship and passion for the industry and those guys, here you are, Supply Chain Fitness. Like that's incredible to me. That's super cool.
Yeah, it was, I'm a spiritual religious guy, and I always think, I get put in certain situations for a reason, and I'm sure those situations are still happening to me today. But I just, really like when it was happening, I was, and I think you can probably relate to this of certain aspects of your career as well. But I was a couple of years into the coaching, the Joes or the moms who are just trying to get a little bit stronger, like the power lifters who's trying to put 5 pounds on their squat. And I'm just like, that's fun and exciting, but man, the impact of helping Bob, who's 38 years into trucking, is diabetic and 40 pounds overweight, lose 20 pounds. And all of a sudden, he now can keep his medical, license, and he can keep his CDL because he can pass his physical. Like, that is so much more rewarding. And there's such like, I always look at it as like, blue ocean versus red ocean, right? And there's not a lot of opportunity. Well, there's a lot of opportunity, but it's not nearly as big of a blue ocean opportunity when you're just a general health and fitness person and you're in this barbell strength online coaching. Every power lifter in the world wants to do that. But like when I saw this opportunity of like, I can be the guy, I can go in and just like embrace this. That was really exciting to me as well.
I think that's cool. I relate in many ways because, we talked a little bit offline, like the part of why I have this podcast is like, how the heck did we all fall into transportation, right? Like most of us were not like, oh man, I just really want to be in logistics. It's kind of like, well, what's this industry? And like, what do you do? And then all of a sudden you realize, man, there's wonderful people in it. There's a way to serve that industry in a pretty way. And we both do that in kind of in different ways, which I think is pretty stinking cool. One of the things you're talking about, like the way that you help people, I want to ask kind of for some of your advice to people who are listening, because we've got people who are drivers who listen, we've got executives at companies, we've got, you know, entry level people who will listen. By and large, it's pretty much a sit down industry. There are obviously people who, you know, are in warehouses or moving around and things like that, but you know, it's pretty sedentary. You talked about, like, you know, Bob, who's been on the road for years and he's had these issues. You know, I know for me, one of the things, I mean, sitting in my gym right now, like one of the things that I had to, after having been an athlete, I was like stagnant and very sedentary for like 4 years. And then I was like, oh no, like my body's changing. I'm feeling, you know, unhealthy. It's harder to do things. And when I got the accountability and joined a CrossFit gym and start getting active again, that really helped. So what can people do? I mean, is there things, whether you're a driver or whether you're, you know, sitting in a cubicle every day, the best thing for your health, do you have like just some bullet point advice that you could give us?
Yeah, man, I think it's all about the mindset and the mental direction you take from the get-go. And I think it's really doing some self-assessment and saying, where are you starting wise from a health standpoint, and where do you want to go? I think it is important to kind of say, like, what is an end goal? And then from there, I think really what I've realized, and I think this goes past just drivers, but I think this is our culture in general, is I think a lot of the culture around health, diet changes, fitness is, I'm going to start a diet on Monday and I'm making this 180 flip in my life. I'm changing everything possible. And then you hold on for dear life and you're back to square one after, you know, a week. And I think every time that you do that, it adds this like fail to your resume. And then you're like, you failed, you know, maybe 10 or 20 times in your adult life to make health changes because you think that is what health changes are.
Yeah.
But really, when you break down to it, the game of being healthy is actually to stay healthy, right? And build it around your lifestyle, where what is something that you can consistently do for the rest of your life? Because if you do 1 month on, 1 month off for the rest of your life, you're going to end up nowhere because you kind of get in the zone and then you're back to it. And so the thing that I would tell anyone out there is to say, just like a semi truck, where if it's starting from zero and it's got to get up to 65 on the highway, it doesn't go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. It takes a little bit of time. It sometimes takes miles. You know, I have drivers say sometimes when they're stopping, it takes 10 minutes before and then 10 minutes after to catch up and get back up to where they're going. And I think it's very similar to your health, where it's like, I would really focus on starting smaller than you think, building up small wins, starting in areas that you are motivated and exciting and you feel like are low-hanging fruits, that are like small wins that don't really change your day-to-day life a ton, but adding up, they get the tires turning and they get that momentum. And I think momentum is everything. And if you try to build too much momentum too fast, you fall on your face and it doesn't work. But if you slowly make these changes and you build it into your routine where you're doing it consistently, and I always like the premise of like habit stacking, where you start with one habit, as it becomes something that's more regular, you stack another habit on top of it. As that becomes another, regular, you stack another habit on it. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, you're just like, your life doesn't feel that much different because it's just been like a 1% change or like a 0.5% change that's just been adding up over time. And, it's feeling good. And so, I think the mental model I'd say to anyone who's like trying to make a change to their health is, say to yourself, all right, what is my plan? And think about your plan and can you realistically see yourself still doing this in 5 years or 3 years? And if the answer is no, then you're probably starting too much. You're trying to bite too much off of at once. And so breaking that down and breaking it down sometimes to even like a laughable thing of just like, all right, I'm gonna drink a glass of water today, or I'm gonna change, instead of 3 sodas, I'm gonna drink 2 sodas and a diet soda or a glass of water. And I think those are the things that are like seem like almost they're not doing anything, but if you do them consistently, really add up quickly and build that momentum, and then get you in the mindset to find other small things that all add up, and then all of a sudden you're living, you drop 10 pounds, you're feeling more energized, you're sleeping better, and you just feel 10 years younger in general.
Well, and I love that because you're you're creating an identity for yourself too, right? And I think that's so important because like you said earlier, if I start something and I keep failing because the goal is so massive, like, oh, I'm gonna go be an Iron Man. Okay, like that's a fine goal, but there's only that's a hard thing, and there takes a lot of time and effort there. So if I keep failing, well, if I fail 20 times, suddenly I'm starting to think maybe I'm a failure, right? Maybe I just can't be healthy. Well, you don't have to be an Iron Man to be healthy, right? So you have to like, well, what's my actual values and goals, right? And I love that because then it's like, maybe I just walk around the block during lunch. Maybe then from there, I say, yeah, I'm gonna jog once a day. Guess what? If you start doing that, then you can say like, I'm a runner. Like that's an identity that you start to develop. And if it's something that's realistic, I just love the idea of that habit stacking where it's like, hey, this is something I do. Now this is something I do. And now it's just routine. It's like life. It's just a normal thing. And it's amazing what that suddenly can do for both your identity and for your morale, right? Suddenly.
For sure. And I always tell drivers, like, you don't even have like to start, like, you don't have to stop going to McDonald's or Wendy's or wherever you're going at, Hardee's, whatever. Here's a meal, here's a restaurant guide. Pick the healthiest option there. At
Right.
any place you go, there is a healthier option. Is
Mhm.
that always the healthiest? Maybe
Right.
not, but your goal is not Arnold Schwarzenegger or to be a professional fitness person. You
Yeah.
don't need to lock everything down perfectly. All you need to do is make some of these small adjustments. And if someone goes to the truck stops or a fast food restaurant and picks the healthiest option available every single day for their 30-year career, you literally have two different people staring at you at the end of that career. And it is mind boggling how crazy different of an impact from a health standpoint just these small day-to-day decisions can have on you if done consistently.
I love that. I think that's so good. I think that's so good. And it's amazing how much that translates into like your working life too. Like
Oh, definitely.
somebody, helping people with careers. I'm like, it's the same thing with making the cold calls or, getting into doing a little bit extra work, or helping someone else in training and mentoring. Like you start to develop those habits where that's just the thing that you do. And you're only going to improve yourself. So I love that. That's incredibly cool. When you look back to your career, right? We talked about how you kind of landed here in transportation, and logistics. What do you think is the most pressing problem when it comes to just like health and fitness overall? Like, is it just the industry in general? Is it advertising? Is it our attitudes? Like, what do you think is the most pressing issue?
In general, about health and wellness in trucking, is your
Mhm.
question?
Yeah.
Man, I think there's kind of some layers to peel back here, right? I mean, I think I always say to drivers, especially in just the industry as a whole, of like, you can't, like, I don't want to put the fact that you drive and sit behind the wheel for 11 to, 13 hours a day, um, as a I don't want to blame you for that. You can't do you can't do anything about that. It's not a variable that you can change because that is how your family survives and you put food on the table. And but all the other aspects and all the other factors when the truck is in park, there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think that there's a couple of factors. Number one, I think you can say that the culture in trucking has kind of been a little bit of a old school. Hey, we can't do anything about it. Nah, screw it. I can't do anything about my health. This is kind of how it is. This is what I signed up for. When I became a truck driver, it just kind of, that's what was that's what happened to me. And I think that the newer generation coming in the industry it's going to have to change it, to be honest. But I think just younger people in general, and I think more people as a whole are becoming more health conscious and realizing that there are things that can be changed. I think there's also a little bit of culture and industry standpoint that drivers just kind of get treated like secondhand citizens sometimes and get thrown to the curbside, and no one gives them the respect. A lot of people don't give them the respect they deserve. And when you don't, when you get treated like that on a day-to-day basis, all of a sudden you're treating yourself like that. And it's an identity thing as well. And I see a lot of drivers who have some of that negative self-talk that they just look down on, and they kind of also have like this inward hate for a lot of people that they're dealing with, because they just feel like their backs against the wall, and they everyone's coming towards them ready to fight. And it's like, no, like, okay, like we need to change that. And like, that's what I really try to, with the relationships we build, the coaching staff and everything builds at Supply Chain Fitness, is like, we're here for you. We want to help you. We know that, no one is perfect. No one's life is set up perfectly, and that's okay. And so, I think that's important. And so, I would say those are some of the bigger things that are causing it. And, I think when I look back at just kind of the biggest shiny problem as a whole, is I just think the amount of chronic disease in trucking is really scary. And when I say chronic disease, I'm talking about diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, obesity. And, when you look at, the data as a whole, like, the CDC says 7 out of every 10 people in the United States will die from a chronic disease. And from an industry standpoint, and just like an overarching thing, 86% of healthcare dollars spent in the United States is on managing a chronic disease. Wow. So there's a lot of money from a company standpoint, especially if they're self-insured and they hold a lot of that risk. And there's a lot of quality of life aspect where, trucking has the highest rates of diabetes among any other occupation in the United States. The amount of 7 out of every 10 truck drivers are obese. They've got 2 times the amount of hypertension, rates of hypertension compared to the average US worker. And, a lot of these chronic diseases, especially the ones we just talked about, are lifestyle based, preventing it, and also lifestyle based to manage and reverse it as well. And I think there's a lot of people that get really stuck in this vicious cycle of, they work 11 to 14 hours a day. They're mentally and physically drained after they get off the clock. Life didn't stop when they're on the clock. So they've got this long list of chores and to-dos that they have to deal with once they're done with work. Then you add family and kids into the equation, and they have to sleep, and then they wake up and repeat the whole cycle over and over again. And it's this vicious cycle that they get stuck in, and it's really sets them up for no time for themselves, for their health. They're physically inactive. Their diet's not great, because when you're mentally drained, the Big Mac sounds a lot better than the grilled chicken sandwich, and the large fries sounds awesome as well. And, they're probably not sleeping great. And like all of that combined is just as like breeding ground for chronic diseases. And I think that is something that we're really looking at and targeting and trying to combat. And, something that's been interesting for me is kind of looking at that lack of time and mental bandwidth aspect to figure out ways that we can open that up and hopefully insert some chronic care management or physical health changes in that extra time we could open up for.
Yeah, you said so many good things in there. One of the things that really stuck out to me was the chronic health issues. The data was fantastic. And I read an article recently, and basically it was saying, repeated some of the same data that you mentioned when it comes to chronic diseases in the United States, but it also said like basically the cure, or those can be prevented. Most of those can be prevented by physical activity. And saying like, hey, if you can get physically active, and even, I think he said something as little as like 20 to 30 minutes daily, if you can just be physically active. And again, I'll leave that to the expert, but like, that was shocking to me, right? Like that, like, hey, if I can just schedule in this amount of like physical activity, I don't have to be a superstar running, marathon. I don't have to be, bench pressing 500 pounds. But, can I walk? Can I do some sit-ups? Can I do some push-ups? Can I be active for a little bit to keep my body working and hopefully if I do that consistently, prevent some of those terrible things. Like that was interesting to me. Does that
Yeah.
sound right? Or am I off?
Yeah, so the U.S. government has this thing called physical activity guidelines for healthy Americans, and chronic disease fits right into it. And one of the things that they in their guidelines they say, a healthy American or a healthy person, the goal should be 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous aerobic exercise per week, which broken up is like five workouts of 30 minute, 5 sessions of 30-minute walking. And then they also say 2 to 3 minutes of 2 to 3 sessions of full body resistance training. And so resistance training is basically anything that's like making your muscles stronger. So think about like lifting weights or even doing body weight exercises or exercises with a resistance band. And so, I think there's been also some really interesting studies that I always use and talk to drivers where they broke down and they actually found that um, physical activity sessions of even 5 minutes at a time can have a positive impact on your health. And so, that 30 minutes, that 150 minutes a week, that's the, in a way the gold standard or what you're going for. That doesn't mean you need to jump to that day one. And things can just start with a 5 or 10 minute walk, like you just said, a
Right.
couple times a week, and then build on top of that and just slowly chunk your way up. And there's a lot of things that can happen and positive things that can happen for you, even if you don't get all the way up to that 150 minutes a week and doing some resistance training as well. Just getting in a consistent mood, getting outside, breathing some fresh air, getting some blood flowing. I mean, mentally will do wonders for you, not only with the physical health impacts as well.
I love that. That's so good. That's so good. I want to be cautious of our time. I know you got things coming up here, but typically, kind of as we work towards wrapping up, one of the things I want to know, and this has been awesome, and we're gonna have you back on to talk more. But one of the things I like to ask is, books. Is there books that you would recommend that maybe have been impactful for you on your journey that might be helpful for people on their journey in their careers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is one like fitness wise or anything like that, but it's a book I read recently, and then also with the movie that came out as well. But I recently read Shoe Dog, the story of
Yeah.
Nike, and that whole story of Phil Knight and starting Nike. And as a founder and entrepreneur, that's something that's I always like listening to other stories of other founders and stuff like that, and that was very inspirational. And then my wife and I went to the theaters probably like a month or so ago to see Air, the movie about
Yeah.
Nike signing Michael Jordan, everything like
Great.
that. But let me come out here. I got to look this up because I got another book that I really okay. It's called the other book I'd recommend, and this is more so for people who are getting started in their journey, and this can be on the entrepreneurial side or health side, is it's called Chop Wood Carry Water, and it's
Okay.
by and it's like a very like it's a 45-page book or like
Cool.
something like very short, and it's got very short chapters that just talk about like fundamental stuff of just like some of the things we all struggle with of like patience of
Mm.
realizing that every day you got to just chip away at it. And part of building your house or building towards your goal is you just got to go in and chop wood and carry water every single day. And that doesn't make sense, you not having the background of the story, but in the
Right.
story they
It'll make sense
they
once you
build
read it.
around it. You read it, and it's a little bit of like a cute like story kind of thing, but
Mhm.
if you go in with the mindset of like building these principles, like it was, I go back and I have a couple of books that I go back and just like read because they either remind me of
Yeah.
energy or mindsets I had when I first read it,
Right.
or reminds me of how far I've come since I read it the first
Yeah.
time, or just principles I want to live by. And that's one that I check out and sometimes just read certain chapters of just because I'm struggling with that in the moment.
Well, it sounds like it's talking about building good habits as well, and I've got a few books like that as well. So we'll definitely put those in the show notes because anything that can like make a really strong point and remind and encourage, I think is super cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about advice? I always ask this one at the end because I know it's helpful for me to look back and self-reflect, right? The question is, if you had to give your, 19, 20-year-old self some advice based off of where you are today, what would that advice look like?
Well, I'm 26, so I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm that much senior away from a 20-year-old. But what I would tell my 20-year-old self is work on patience and keep being curious and going down rabbit holes of your curiosity. And I think that will and also stay passionate. I think something I'm realizing in life is that when you bring passion to a situation and even a conversation, that takes you really far. And there's a lot of people that really just want to jump on that passion. And so that's something I've been blessed to have, especially with some of the missions I'm on, especially in this trucking industry. And I'd say just keep leaning on that to my 20-year-old self.
That's cool. I love it. That's very good, man. Well, if somebody wanted to talk with you about, what you do, how they can be healthier, how to connect with supply chain fitness, that could be good for them, as someone in trucking or with their supply chain transportation organization, how would they get in contact with you? What would they do?
Yeah. So if you're an individual driver and you want to learn more, we've posted a ton of content across all our social medias. If you look up supply chain fitness on LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of them, that you can do that. And if you're a trucking executive or, someone in the HR department or someone who's like, hey, I am trying to cut down on, turnover, cut down on health related issues, or just trying to differentiate ourselves while recruiting and wanting to, have another tool in the toolbox for my recruiters and show driver leads that, hey, we do things a little bit different and we actually care about our drivers and we know health is a big issue and we want to be proactive with that. And you want an employee benefit that can do that. Go to our website or check me out on LinkedIn. So supplychainfitness.com, or you can look up Dr. Mark Manera on LinkedIn and send me a message.
That's awesome, man. And so as someone who does recruiting all over the industry, I would just say differentiators matter. They really do. When a company can say, hey, here is our values, but they can follow that up with, we mean it, and here is some of these differentiators, these benefits that speak to our values about caring about our people and taking care of our people. So pay attention to those things and definitely get in touch with Mark here as well. Hey man, thank you so much for being on. Well, like I said, we'll have to get you on and talk some other topics here in the future. We appreciate you taking some time in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Recruiting Stories podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on LinkedIn, Adrian Chapman, and Cover 3 Consulting is our company page. Also check out our website, www.cov3consulting.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and we just simply want to remind you that you can change the world by putting people in a position where they can do the most good, and you do that by recruiting. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.